Hey everyone, this is Louis7 and I have a lot of news to share for the Lord of the Rings Online. This comes mostly from the recent questions and answers stream session that executive producer Severlin and the community manager Cordovan hosted for an hour long. I will also trickle in some things from Strimtom's recent interview with some developers of LOTRO from Standing Stone Games, and both of those originals will be linked below for you to check out if you wish for the full details. Otherwise, I want to break down all of this news for y'all in kind of the order of biggest to smallest news so we can get to the exciting things first. But I must say I really appreciate Severlin and Cordovan taking the time to communicate with the LOTRO community because, as I've mentioned in many recent videos, I feel like there's been a lack of this, which is actually a topic we will be getting to in this video. But the last thing here is that even outside of the big content news drops, there's a lot of exciting and important stuff from this that I am super excited to share. But moving on, the very first thing to cover is the broad roadmap for 2021. As expected, Gundabad is slated for the fall of the year as the next major expansion for the game. Also, the Brawler class is 100% confirmed as a new class in 2021, either with or before Gundabad. The Brawler will have some unique systems and animations, and they hope it is really satisfying to play. And after Gundabad, they mentioned that River Hobbits are a new race that they want to release and will be worked on for later in the year. So that's a lot of exciting stuff, but they also talked about what would be between now and Gundabad, and there are a few things to share here. First off, in general, they are planning on having more frequent updates and content drops. These could include smaller expansions which they charge less for and would allow more content overall with more frequent releases, and it sounds like this lessens the stress of actual workers at Standing Stone Games, which I think is a good thing, definitely. But they also want to continue to include the inclusivity of lower level characters with these updates. From Strimtom's interview, actually, they are also looking at ways to include the mission system in future content, and even ways to make it more challenging or make like group content missions. But back to the Q&A, they mentioned that they are going to try to put out more frequent content and at the same time make sure VIPs are given enough value for their subscription. I know this is a big criticism of War of Three Peaks, specifically being a mini expansion and almost being quest pack like, so it sounds like they will try to continue to give more benefits and still will have like regular quest packs included in VIP going forward. But for some specifics, they mentioned there will be at least one endgame update before Gundabad that will be a zone and basically on the road to Gundabad, actually, presumably after the gates of Gundabad that we have at Elderslade, so I'm not sure how that will work, but we will see when the time comes. But another thing they mentioned is they plan to release a new zone that is not for max level characters, and there are many hints of this actually in-game right now, with some new level 50 mobs in an area somewhat near Breeland and Evandam, and also from the update 28.2 beta we even had some hints of this being called Wild Woods of Breeland. And on this note, I hope to cover this topic in open beta leak in another video if I have time. But once again, that is just more content that is inclusive of lower level players, which I personally think is nice, especially if somebody at endgame that doesn't play alts perhaps could actually go back and get something useful out of this new area still. That would be pretty awesome. But one more general thing with future content is they want to tell more side stories and continue with more free and accessible lore-based content. We'll be trying new type of like content to play storyline tales, as they called it, where level doesn't matter, which to me sounds much like Update 27's Great Wedding content. So that is all the big content news we got from the Q&A session. There are a few other big things I want to mention, which to start is they acknowledge some mistakes and issues within and around the game. I think it's very important to see that actually the developers are aware of some issues and are willing to admit that there are some things wrong with the game that can be improved upon. And one of the first things here I want to go on about is they are actually hiring for a bigger team to work on some of these issues and problems that they have had throughout the year and previously. So to me, it sounds like it's a great thing and it could potentially help smooth out future content. I just think make it all around better and make LOTRO an all around better game. Another big topic here was with communication to the community and players, particularly with regards to the lack of communication, actually, especially with the War of Three Peaks update 28. So Severlin said they have this internal system that they don't formally announce or share details on something unless they have an official page for you to find out the official information on the update or expansion or mini expansion or whatever it is. And I think that makes sense, but they said they probably should have made like a temporary forum page to list this official information, because the new LOTRO market page where War of Three Peaks is that we have now, that was actually delayed and something that was not ready until the actual release of the mini expansion. To me, this sounded like something they will try to do better on in the future, and I gotta say, we do already see an improvement in communication with things such as Strimtom's interview and the chat with Severlin here. Also, a note from Strimtom's interview is the developers do listen to feedback and try to improve on it, which is definitely a good thing to hear. So don't just assume all of your suggestions are being ignored. But next up here is some balance and endgame balance news. So they will continue to try to give some class updates every patch. They eventually would like for every trait tree to fill a role and be viable, but it is a slow process to get there. And they do acknowledge that some trees are basically useless and need to be updated. They also want every tank to have a place and are looking to do an update to tanking in general and popularly requested Guardian tanking, because captains are much better than them right now, which I know a lot of Guardian players are not happy about. But for me, I can only dream of a LOTRO world where Warden tanks could be viable again. The next thing is they have had a challenging year, largely in part due to the ongoing pandemic situation, and they have all been working from home, which was an unexpected setback for them. This has also caused a bit more trouble for them to communicate because they have had to overcome these internal communication barriers here as well. But during all of this, they have also been doing a lot of infrastructure and kind of behind the scenes work, it sounds like. And additionally, they mentioned that a lot of connection issues were actually caused by DDoS attacks, which kind of surprised me since they were so quiet about that earlier. And just from my very limited experience, honestly, other gaming companies do seem fine to share when a DDoS is a cause of connection issues. But setting that aside, the point here is they address the issues of server lag and are still working to improve it, and they know that needs to be better, and hopefully it will be getting better over time. And also they mentioned they are still wanting to and trying to get to work on getting the closed server transfers working, but it has been challenging along with all these other server issues that have been going on. But the next big thing I have to share here is legendary servers. First off, for the previously announced Eye of Sauron legendary server, they actually still have to work out what they want to do with that server, if it will even come in the first place. So they kind of stepped back and admitted to perhaps announcing it too early with this year's producer's letter, but they aren't even sure if the Eye of Sauron mechanic, which essentially sometimes increases mob and player damage for those unaware, but they are unsure if that would be fun, and they still just have to decide if they want a new server with unique mechanics like that, it sounds like. And for the current legendary servers of Anor and Ithil, they still don't have a release date or even estimate for level 100 content. And they're still working on how to get LI imbuement to work on that server as well, it sounds like. So they also briefly mentioned that when these current legendary servers do catch up to the regular live servers, what happens to them will depend basically on the player base they have. They could open transfers off of them if basically nobody plays on these servers still, or if they are well populated and have healthy game worlds, they could just keep them running as their own still. And the final big news section here is on endgame, and to be honest, to me this seemed to be largely brushed over, but they did focus in on legendary items, which they are still working on the revamp for, but they have run into many behind the scenes issues that, among other things this year, have caused a lot of delay with it. Unfortunately, this means we have to deal with the current system for the foreseeable future. And also clash trait points. They were only brought up in that they are not at the moment planning on expanding the number of usable trait points. And I gotta bring this up here because I think the way you have to get trait points in the game is actually the single worst thing in the game to me. And they did not mention any changes to not forcing you to do specific quest or D-type content for these. But oddly, they did briefly say that there are a number of ways to get them, but as far as I know right now, there are only 2 unusable points, so that is all a bit odd, but I should get off this topic now and move on to virtues, because I have a whole video on clash trait points if you want to watch that. But as far as virtues go, they said the new virtue system is if you only get 5 virtues up, the ones you have equipped, that is basically easy enough and not too grindly for alts and endgame accessibility, which I am not 100% sure that I agree with. But overall for me, I was honestly disappointed with this section, unfortunately. Unless these things improve over time and as time goes on, I will actually continue to do less and less in-game content in LOTRO, I think, because it really does bother me, and I don't think these are good player-friendly systems. But for the rest of the news I have for y'all is more minor overall, but I still think it is very important. There are important things in here. But first off, they are getting close to race changes becoming available, but still don't have an exact date on that. Second is they are looking at ways to allow you to avoid mounted combat if you want it, which I know can be particularly annoying in Rohan and Gondor in those areas, so they are also with the war state in general just looking at decreasing the clunkiness. Particularly they mentioned potentially allowing you to turn like more sharply or quicker, just smoother turning. And the third here is they are looking to work on improving scaling with 4K resolution, and they did acknowledge it's a big issue. They want to finish this first, but afterwards, after the 4K resolution, they can have maybe user interface perks and also to work on like Lua and API software add-ons and the such. And the fourth here is the LOTRO free quest period was something they did just to give people who were stuck at home because of 2020 issues something to do, and it wasn't actually a marketing tool. They said maybe something like this could return or maybe not, but as mentioned earlier, they do want to include more free content in general in the future, but they still also want to make sure VIPs get enough value out of their subscription at the same time. And moving on, the last few things here are just super rapid fire notes I have. They are wanting to do more passes on animations and work out kinks with those and make them more consistent. I know Dwarf Champion animations were specifically mentioned, but in general it sounds like animation and time animating sounds expensive for them. And they are also still trying to resolve issues with the LOTRO market because people are still unable to buy War of Three Peaks, but no estimated time on any specific resolutions. And on that note, they are actually definitely looking to add capability to gift content through the new LOTRO market, which is what War of Three Peaks was on again. So that is good for people who want to be able to gift that or have it even gifted to them, because that was not a thing with War of Three Peaks, which kind of sucked with that. But moving on, they are definitely wanting to do some work on kinships and updating them, but it seems like kind of like many of the things from the 2020 producers letter that this is delayed right now. And they also have no news on fellowship maneuvers and making them more useful or more hobbies or new musical instruments or new housing areas. And that is all of the recent Lord of the Rings Online news I have for y'all in regards to the upcoming 2021 year and a bit beyond, which I must say that is looking quite exciting for the game. And I think there is a lot of good content to come, even if some improvements are still needed heading into the year. And once again, I do want to thank Severlin and Cordovan for hosting this Q&A live stream, and also once again to StreamTom for doing that interview, which I pulled a little bit of information from to give you all a good news roundup. And speaking of that, I hope this has been helpful for you all, and I hope you all did enjoy it. And if you did or learned something useful, please consider liking and subscribing for more or becoming a channel member to support the content. And thanks for watching, everyone.